it's something that I do believe had a really big knock-on effect to my PMDD, and I can kind of even chart that in diaries and things like that.
Really?
That was when things had gotten a lot worse, and it is a difficult thing to talk about, but I decided that it was a good thing to talk about because there could be people listening that are going through the same thing, as well as having a lot of guilt that a partner or a friend or a family member has to kind of take care of you. I think there's a lot of guilt and shame there as well, that you need more than the average person. At least that's something that I've really struggled with. But my GP had basically said to me that he couldn't refer me to a gynecologist until I had tried every single contraception or PMDD recommended treatment option. Until I had tried all of those options, he said that he couldn't refer me.
What a load of bollocks. Is it possible for you to differentiate between almost PMDD symptoms and then living with autism and ADHD? Can you separate those things?
When you're looking at something through that kind of neurotypical lens, it does become so ingrained and you think that there's something wrong with you, and you're like, maybe I am too dramatic, maybe I am too sensitive, maybe I am too difficult. At its worst, I ended up in hospital with plans to take my life.
Lily, welcome to the Girl Chat.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So nice to have you here. You live with PMDD, but also autism and ADHD.
Yep.
So there's a really interesting conversation for me here that we haven't really had before in relation to PMDD or actually much neurodivergence at all. I want to start with who Lily was before you had any of the diagnosis and labels that you have now had in more recent years.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what life was like for you before all of that.
Yeah, so I'm 30 now, and I didn't receive my ADHD and autism diagnosis until the last couple of years. Okay. So like a lot of women, I went undiagnosed for a long time, as well as having kind of experience with getting misdiagnosed with other things. So growing up, like I remember even as a small child kind of being labelled very sensitive and maybe even by some people too difficult and things like that.
Okay.
And I think that when you're looking at something through that kind of neurotypical lens, it does become so ingrained and you think that there's something wrong with you, and you're like, maybe I am too dramatic, maybe I am too sensitive, maybe I am too difficult. And it's easy to think about how life might have been different if I'd have received that diagnosis, but I know that it is all too common for women to receive a diagnosis later in life. And I think receiving the diagnosis was really affirming, but there was also a lot of sadness to it as well, because for me, it just reached the point where I'd had such intense burnout from masking for so long without even realizing that I was just sad that I couldn't go back to life before that.
Okay.
And there was a lot of skill regression as well, which happens when people kind of receive and come to terms with their diagnosis.
Okay.
So I think, you know, I'm still kind of navigating a lot of, in some ways, kind of shame and, like I said, wanting to go back to the past and how I was before. But I think that is just so bound to happen when we live in a world that's so catered to neurotypical people rather than neurodivergent.
So in terms of masking, it'd be great to describe what that is for people that don't really know anything about it.
Yep.
And how did that affect your experience of just you living your life as a young child or a teenager? Because obviously it sounds like you were very aware that other people were labelling you as the difficult child or the sensitive child, which happens a lot with neurodivergent kids.
Yeah.
But what was your experience actually like living it?
I think that for a long time I just felt like I was an imposter, and not realising that other people could do things so easily without putting all these kind of extra steps and effort into it, and being so exhausted by it all the time. I think that's one thing that really kind of affected me, was just not realising that not other people's brains didn't work in the same way. So for me, a lot of it was, I used to think that I was a really, really introverted person. I used to work on like a shop floor where I'd be having to interact with a lot of people, and it did kind of feel like I was doing an acting gig.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, I would just be so exhausted that I wouldn't want to socialize with my friends that I felt comfortable with. I wouldn't really want to do anything. And the same with the weekends as well. And then when I started to get a kind of better work-life balance in years to come, I realized that maybe I'm not as introverted as I thought. And actually, I was just putting so much effort and energy into masking that I didn't have any energy at the end of the day for me. So I think that was a really big thing. And I think just ultimately having to have your feelings validated by those around you. I had become so accustomed to not trusting my own judgment and feelings because I had been told for so long that I was too emotional, that I was too sensitive.
Right.
And so you're kind of constantly filtering everything that comes in around you to see if the responses you're having.
I was just about, so interesting.
Yeah.
I was just about to ask you, when you talk about being on the shop floor and interacting with strangers and different types of people and ages and backgrounds and all sorts of different things. Obviously, I don't have experience of this, so I don't know, but was it the fact that you almost had to filter and strategically maybe really think about how you responded to other people?
Yeah, and just I think ultimately how exhausted I'd feel at the end of it, whereas the average person wouldn't.
Yeah.
And that was a big kind of telltale sign for me. And I know that there's kind of this narrative that neurodivergent people talk about, that once they kind of realize they're neurodivergent and once they have their diagnosis, that they do go through a little bit of a kind of skill regression. And say, for example, an autistic person finding out they're autistic, sort of saying how they almost felt more autistic as soon as they found out, because it's almost as if you allow yourself the space to unmask and to ask for extra accommodations and things like that you were just pushing through for so long. And it's like you can't go back once you know. It's so hard to put into words, but it's something that I definitely experienced as well.
That's so interesting. So almost the safety and the confirmation of the label of whatever neurodivergent condition it might be, autism or ADHD or anything else, that almost enabled maybe yourself and others to put a pause on the masking.
Yep.
And then it's almost like opening the floodgates of all the things that
exactly
you could do with having to help you navigate.
And I think especially when you're late diagnosed, a lot of the time when you receive that diagnosis, because you've got to that point of just complete burnout and complete exhaustion. I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago if I thought I was autistic or if I had ADHD, I'd think absolutely not.
Wow.
So going through that kind of stage of just complete burnout is really eye-opening. So, yeah.
Wow. We'll kind of shift slightly while still maintaining on this track of you got your PMDD diagnosis before your autism and ADHD diagnosis.
Yep.
So when we get to kind of teenage years and obviously puberty and hormones and everything starts raging around, what was happening for you at the start of this like PMDD journey? Because obviously it was quite a few years before you got that diagnosis.
It's so hard to say exactly because there's such an overlap. Obviously, it's very common for neurodivergent people to have PMDD. I know that from a teenager, I'd always suffered with very painful periods. I know that that's not necessarily related to PMDD, but again, a lot of people that have PMDD might have suspected endometriosis and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think as I got older, sort of in my early 20s, that was when it became more apparent that there was something more.
Okay.
Ever since being a teenager, I'd struggled with depression and anxiety. And I think a lot of the time when you're a teenager, people around you think, oh, it's just kind of that phase of your hormones changing and kind of not being coddled in the same way as when you're a child and kind of learning that the world is maybe not the best place.
Okay.
And I think as I got older, it just became more apparent that it wasn't kind of your typical teenage angst. It was more than that. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly, but there's definitely been a few factors in my life that have contributed to the worsening symptoms of PMDD. And I see a lot of people talk about that, whether it be kind of trauma that you've gone through or sort of changes within your hormones. So I've spoken to a number of women that have said things like once they had a child, after their pregnancy, they found that their PMDD had gotten worse.
Wow.
I haven't really spoken about this before, but I had a pregnancy when I was younger. And although that pregnancy wasn't carried full term and delivered, it's something that I do believe had a really big knock-on effect to my PMDD. Okay. And I can kind of even chart that in diaries and things like that,
Really?
that was when things had gotten a lot worse. And it is a difficult thing to talk about, but I decided that it was a good thing to talk about because there could be people listening that are going through the same thing. And there's not a huge amount of research on it. And although obviously our hormones do go back to normal after pregnancy, no matter how long that pregnancy is, there is anecdotal research that perhaps our hormone sensitivities don't go back to pre-pregnancy, that it can affect that. And as we know, PMDD, it's not a hormone disorder. It's about the sensitivity to the fluctuation of your hormones.
Yes. It's the body's response to its own levels changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gosh, okay. Yeah, and that's really obviously very brave, not easy at all to talk about that. And you mentioned that women quite often talk about trauma and life experiences and things. So it sounds like there's definitely a need for research down that avenue about, you know, could we take a huge pool of people, of women, and say, you know, can you track any traumatic life events or childhood trauma, or like you say, pregnancies or miscarriages or anything like that? Definitely would be really interesting to find out what the link to that is.
100%. And, you know, I think looking at my life now, I've tried to remove as much stress as I possibly can. And that really does help. Things like walking away from toxic relationships or even particular friendships. And just my life is so much smaller now than it used to be, but it's also a lot quieter, a lot more peaceful.
Yeah.
A big thing for me as well is that I went sober, and I found that that's made a really big difference as well. It wasn't an easy thing to do, especially when drinking is a big part of masking for a lot of neurodivergent people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been hard, but it's also been really, really great to get to know who I am without all that extra stuff.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your relationship with previous coping mechanisms that you used, if that was alcohol was one of them and any others? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. I've tried so many different kind of coping mechanisms, some of them good, some of them not so good. And I think the thing is when someone's looking at a person that has a particular condition or disorder that affects their life negatively, they would look at someone and think, well, why are you drinking? Why are you going out and partying and doing God knows what? But I think when you're in that moment, you're so desperate for some sort of distraction and quick relief that you'll try anything.
Yeah.
And I think there's also an element of just complete hopelessness that you feel doomed either way. So you might as well try and take your brain out of whatever's going on, even just for a moment.
Okay.
And I think for me, I had kind of lost any hope that things would get better and improve, that I kind of just didn't care anymore.
Okay.
So that was definitely a really difficult time. And then what I was almost finding was I would turn to drinking and partying when I felt bad to try and distract myself. But then when I was in the good part of my cycle, I'd want to make the most of it and to celebrate feeling good. So I'd end up doing the exact same things, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
But it was obviously just making me feel worse kind of in the long run.
How bad did it get at its worst for you?
At its worst, I ended up in hospital with plans to take my life. Very fortunately, a friend called an ambulance, so I was safe. But it was just a really, really difficult time. And it was just a weekend of absolute chaos.
Okay.
Something that is still really hard to kind of think about, and that I was at that point. But, you know, we know too well that unfortunately people with PMDD, I think it's 1 in 3 will attempt to take their life. And it was definitely a kind of turning point for me of thinking, okay, well, this isn't working anymore. And what more can I do to kind of try and get help and to feel better?
Sounds like it was a big crossroads moment for you. At its worst in terms of PMDD symptoms, I mean, I don't know, I'm really interested. Part of me is wondering whether, is it possible for you to differentiate between almost PMDD symptoms and then living with autism and ADHD? Can you separate those things? And if you can, what does PMDD look like for you? Because obviously there's a lot of symptoms that you can experience.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of crossover. I think the biggest thing obviously being that when I'm in the follicular part of my cycle, the good part, everything else feels a lot more manageable.
Okay.
And then as soon as I enter that luteal phase, on top of PMDD symptoms, I'll be more prone to having kind of autistic meltdowns and shutdowns. I'll feel the effects of ADHD symptoms like executive dysfunction more, emotional dysregulation. And there's been kind of a lot of talk about the role of the rise in progesterone and how it affects our dopamine production. And I find that that's one of the biggest things for me is when I'm in that bad part of my cycle, I'll try and do the things that should help you, like going for a walk or hanging out with friends, being around loved ones. And it doesn't always work. And I feel like for me, it's almost as if it's not giving me as much dopamine as I need to feel better.
Okay.
So yeah, it can be hard to differentiate, but I know that I kind of can see what is PMDD and what is just exacerbating any kind of neurodivergency.
Yeah.
Because with my PMDD symptoms, the kind of worst things that I will have is emotional symptoms, as well as some physical symptoms as well. So, but in terms of emotional and kind of mental symptoms, I will experience kind of suicidal ideation, just complete hopelessness and depression, not having really any motivation to do anything, having very kind of black and white thinking.
Okay.
I think when you're stuck in that bad part of the cycle and in those bad kind of thought loops going round, you can't remember how you felt before and you can't see any way out of it.
Okay.
Like logic just completely goes out the window. You can have people saying to you, oh, your period's going to come in 5 days, you're going to feel better, and you just don't believe it, even though time and time again, that's the pattern that happens. Another thing I've found as well is that I'll have really bad insomnia and really strange dreams and nightmares.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
I don't, obviously for different reasons, I've had a lot of horrible nightmares and dreams and things for very different reasons, and that's just awful.
Yeah.
Not being able to sleep and then waking up from a night's sleep and just thinking,
I don't feel rested.
God, I feel like I've been thrashed around mentally and physically.
Yeah. And the worst is when you wake up in the middle of the night from a nightmare and you almost feel a bit delirious. You know, when you've got a fever and you don't really know what's real, and you wake up from the nightmare and you're still quite scared and you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah,
exactly that. And then when you wake up fully in the morning, you're like, why was I so scared about that ridiculous dream?
It's halfway through the night when I've accidentally like punched or smacked Charlie because I've been like fighting in my sleep, and he gets like an elbow or a fist in the face when he's completely fast asleep.
Yeah, I guess in terms of physical symptoms, just having complete total fatigue, finding it so hard to even get out of bed. Just as well as just kind of waiting for then your period to happen, and then I do get really bad period pains. I feel like that might not necessarily be obviously because of the PMDD, but I feel like a lot of people with PMDD also suffer with painful periods.
That's really interesting, and I suppose because, as you mentioned, the symptoms of PMDD can be so extreme. You know, when we're talking about every month suffering from suicidal ideation and all the others as well, it just makes me think of pure exhaustion, like mental and physical exhaustion, to just go through that every few weeks. So
Yep.
I suppose if you're then also getting to your period thinking, well, this should be one of the two parts of the half of the period that makes me feel better, is also really shit.
Yeah.
Whether, I don't know, whether you have the capacity, mental capacity to even look at that and think, oh, okay, do I need to tackle that? Does that need looking at, those painful periods?
Honestly, for so long, because they're both so bad, and you're so worn down trying to get answers and help for one condition that you're kind of just like, I don't know if I've even got any energy left to look at this.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I had started to go down the private route of looking at my PMDD, I'd also brought up about my sort of physical period symptoms as well and how those were really bad. When I explained my symptoms, he said, it is a really strong possibility that you've got endometriosis. The treatment that we'd give you for the PMDD would also help endometriosis. So we're not going to bother doing any more investigating.
Okay.
Which...
How does that sit with you?
Not great, because you kind of just want to know what's going on.
Yeah, you made a face as you said it, and I kind of thought, like, I don't know if that's 100% okay with her.
Yeah, and then in the end, I wasn't even able to go down that private route because the price of a chemical menopause through this private route was just not obtainable for me right now.
Really extortionate.
Yep.
So talking about PMDD diagnosis, how was that process? Because it sounds like you kind of dabbled into the private healthcare, and I imagine maybe you had some NHS. What happened for you?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed through my GP and only started to look at the private route within the last year, just because I felt like I had exhausted every single option that I could. For a long time, I can't even remember exactly when my GP would have put it officially on my health record that I had PMDD.
Okay.
Because it got to the point where my GP just didn't know anything about it. And I'd been tracking my cycle for however long. I'd been looking into whatever research I could find. That it got to the point I'd go to the doctors, and rather than asking them, do you think I have this? I just start saying, this is what I have. Wow. I know I have this because of all this research I've done, and I'm not getting any kind of help from you guys. And so I'm not too sure when it was officially kind of put on my record, but obviously I've seen specialists since then, and they have agreed with me that it is PMDD. I went down the route of seeing an NHS gynecologist.
Okay.
But that probably took me about 4 years to get to that point.
4 years?
Yeah, because
oh my God.
My GP, I don't think this is the case for every single GP, but I think it's kind of a little bit of a postcode lottery of who you end up with. But my GP had basically said to me that he couldn't refer me to a gynecologist until I had tried every single contraception or PMDD recommended treatment option. Until I had tried all of those options, he said that he couldn't refer me.
What a load of bollocks.
So I tried like so many different SSRIs. I tried the copper coil. I tried the Mirena coil. I tried 2 or 3 different types of contraceptive pill. Yeah, it was a long process. I even at one point tried mood stabilizers. I had tried so many different things, as well as my own things as well from research, whether that be kind of supplements.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, supplements and things like that.
That annoys me. One of the top things that probably annoys me that I hear, because that actually has been a comment that's come up so recently on social media when we've been doing videos and talking about guidelines and advocating for yourself. So many women have been saying like, whatever the condition, whether it's PMDD or endo or something else, been like basically saying my gynecologist is withholding this treatment or this referral unless I do this. And it's basically, if you very, very simplify it, it just sounds like blackmail. Like you can't have this referral or treatment or basically expertise or whatever that you deserve as a patient and have a right to unless we can force you to take something.
Yeah.
Like they're always going to offer drug and hormonal treatment first because it's cheaper, and in the guidelines it always says to try that before anything more extreme, which makes complete sense when you're talking about maybe surgery and things. But if someone doesn't want to put that into their body and they are not comfortable with that, you cannot hold other options as ransom before they do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like we also see that on the other end of the spectrum, where people are willing to try particular treatment options, but doctors don't want to do it. So I'm not too sure in terms of treatment for other kind of disorders, but I think there probably is quite a lot of overlap where things like having a chemical menopause or surgical menopause, I've heard of so many people being like, I'm willing to do this, this is what I want to do, and doctors turning around and saying, oh, but you might want children one day. And it's a difficult argument, but I think if you've gone through so many different steps and you are sure in your decision, then it's your body and it's your choice. If you decide to elect for a hysterectomy or an oophorectomy, it's up to you what you want to do.
Yeah.
So
you're right. It's a really delicate balance, isn't it? Because on one side of the scale, I was 18 and they offered me a hysterectomy, which felt crazy and really irresponsible.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the scale, maybe if, in a different reality, if everything I tried hadn't made things any better and I was maybe 15 years down the line and it was as horrific as it was when I was 16, I could definitely imagine another version of myself being like, I've tried everything. Like, get it out of me. I don't want to do this anymore.
No, 100%.
You're right. It's informed consent, isn't it? And it has to come from the patient. You can't force someone to do something or not do something.
Yeah. I would really love to see like some sort of law or particular guidelines that medical professionals have to do to make these decisions, because I feel like a lot of the time people are just being turned away from treatments that would be so life-saving for them that they've put a lot of thought and fight into, and it just feels really, really unfair to say no, you can't do that to your own body. So,
and in terms of PMDD treatments, obviously you tried all those contraceptives that the GP told you had to try. Any other treatments that you've tried, and how have they been?
So I've tried hormonal contraception. I tried the Mirena coil and the copper coil, which was just absolute hell. In terms of kind of non-contraceptive methods, I've tried a few different SSRIs, both continuously as well as on a kind of cyclical basis. So you take it just in the luteal phase. At one point I was put on mood stabilizers, which I could not last long on them at all because I just slept so much. It was ridiculous. And I just felt like a zombie. Other treatments that I've tried lots of different types of supplements, which before I kind of really knew what I was doing with supplements, I feel like it can be a bit of a dangerous game because I was probably taking way too many.
And expensive as well,
It's very expensive.
Like, you go on TikTok and it'll convince you need every supplement going.
Yeah, I mean, I still already take so many, and I probably did the worst thing of trying all of them, starting them all at the same time, so then you don't know what's really helping. I've also tried neuromodulation therapy, so like a headband that you wear for the lead up to kind of your period, which basically sends like electrical kind of signals to different parts of the brain associated with mood and pain.
How was that?
It definitely takes the edge off, but me remembering to do it is a whole other thing. And this is also such a small, silly thing, but you have to wet your hair to do it, which is a little bit annoying. I look like a drowned rat afterwards every time.
It's not glamorous, is it, these treatments?
And I mean, it does subside, but the first 5 minutes or so, you feel like a tingle. And for me, it is sensory overload. It feels kind of like I've got bleach on my scalp and all I want to do is just itch. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever had bleach done or whatever. But
yeah, for some ridiculous reason, I decided to go blonde when I was at uni, and I did absolutely kill my hair off.
Yeah.
So yeah, that horrible, like, I can't touch it, but I need to touch it feeling.
Yeah, exactly that. So there's been a lot of different methods. I've also tried HRT without any kind of chemical menopause. And that was really interesting. But that was when I was with the NHS looking at that under NHS guidance. And there wasn't a really great follow-up about it. So I was put on to estrogen patches that I would have kind of every day. You change them, I think, once a week it was. And then I would have progesterone for day 17 to 28 of my cycle.
Okay.
And what was really strange, I feel like a lot of the time people think that progesterone is the big baddie when it comes to PMDD, that everyone with PMDD must not tolerate progesterone very well. But for me, I felt better when I was on the estrogen and progesterone than when I was just on the estrogen patches alone, which was really interesting. Yeah.
That kind of, like you say, breaks this assumption that a lot of people have made around PMDD.
Yeah.
That progesterone's like the big bad wolf.
Yeah. So I still have no idea really kind of what my hormones are saying. The only time I've checked my hormones was when I paid privately.
Okay.
And I was told to take the test at around day 3 or 4 of my period. And my levels all came back fine then, except for they also checked my ferritin, which was iron, which was low, but that was, you know, not related to hormones. And all my hormones came back normal, but obviously our hormones do fluctuate throughout our cycle. So who's to say if you did that test again at different parts of the cycle, if they would line up with what should be normal for that part of your cycle.
Exactly. I mean, when we're bleeding, all of the hormones are all at their lowest levels whilst you're bleeding. You know, if you did it, like you say, follicular at the peak of ovulation, and then as you enter the luteal, you know, you could have 3 completely different results, or you should have 3 completely different results, but to what extremes?
Yeah, no, exactly. So, yeah, it's been a long process of trying a lot of different things. At the moment, I am actually trying another contraceptive pill.
Okay.
I'm trying a progesterone-only pill. So that has been, to be honest, it's not been great.
Okay.
But I'm trying to give it 3 months to see, because it can take some time for your body to get used to things.
Yeah.
But that was essentially as a result of going back to the NHS gynecologist, explaining the symptoms that I was having with the HRT, her not really believing me, that I felt at my worst when it was just the estrogen.
You said to her that HRT, just estrogen,
Yeah.
was making you feel worse, and
Yeah.
she didn't believe you.
Yeah, she said, well, if anything, you should feel worse when you're having the progesterone as well. And I was like, I know it doesn't make any sense in terms of the broad message of PMDD, but this is how I feel. I took a friend with me so that I'd have kind of a bit of moral support. And yeah, I just burst into tears because I'd gone in there wanting to try the chemical menopause, and she just downright refused it.
Oh my
I was
God.
just like, oh, try this contraceptive pill.
But the huge assumption she's making about, well, you should feel worse on this one versus this one, that assumption is based on little to no research on PMDD without understanding why it happens.
Yeah.
Or real fundamentals about it, like so many conditions that we talk about on the podcast. So
No, exactly.
it's not like she's even got hardcore evidence where she could be like, no, I can categorically tell you. And even then, your real life experience, that is some of the best evidence she's got. Like it's what you say is happening to you.
No, exactly. And I remember even at that appointment, I explained it, sort of said I wanted a chemical menopause. She said no, was then thinking about what she could offer me instead. And she was like, oh, I'm just going to go speak to my colleague that I think knows a bit more about this. So that doesn't really fill you with confidence that you've gone to see a specialist.
No.
And they're thinking, let me go chat to someone else and see what they think.
Well, if you need a second opinion, we always encourage second opinions. So it's really important. But if you need a second opinion, fine. But then don't decline something or deny your real life experience with such conviction. If you're then in the next minute going to be like, oh, I'm not actually sure, I'm going to go talk to someone.
Yeah.
Fine, go talk to someone. But don't tell you that what is your real life isn't real.
Yeah. It's difficult as well because I do understand that not a lot is known about PMDD. So it's kind of like, how much blame can we put onto particular kind of doctors and things when it's more of it's a bigger picture, but it's still not good enough. I mean, for the people on the receiving end of it, whoever's fault it is, whatever system's fault it is, doesn't make any difference to what you're experiencing. So
yeah, you still walked out of that appointment upset, like you said.
Yeah.
We're taking a quick break to say thank you to today's sponsor, BU Period. When it comes to women's health, I'm obsessed with all things holistic and natural. My go-to product is BU's pain relief patches. The combination of menthol and eucalyptus is pure bliss when an endo flare hits. Whether it's pelvic pain, back pain, leg pain, or anything else, they give me the instant and long-lasting relief I need. And you can even set up your own subscription so that you never run out of natural pain relief. If you want to get your hands on BU's patches, you can find the link in the show notes. And make sure you use the code INJAP10 to get your exclusive listener discount. Now let's get back to the girl chat. So we've had the PMD diagnosis, and then you mentioned a few years later, we had an autism diagnosis and an ADHD diagnosis.
Yeah.
What led you to, did you self-pursue those diagnoses, or did someone else mention it? How did it come about?
Yeah, so I decided to pursue those on my own after speaking to a lot of people within the kind of neurodivergent field, whether that be, there was someone I spoke to that was a doctor that diagnosed autism that said to me, I think maybe you should pursue this.
Wow.
As well as I was just finding that all of my friends and ex-partners are neurodivergent, and it just seemed like I was just drawn to neurodivergent people, and I feel like that's what we do, is kind of we flock to each other.
Yeah.
So that was something I decided to pursue on my own, especially because I can't remember exactly how many years ago it was now, but I was misdiagnosed with a personality disorder. So I was misdiagnosed with something called obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is different to OCD.
Oh my goodness.
And I had kind of been waiting for so long to have a diagnosis that would make me feel validated and seen. And then the more I kind of sat with it, the more it didn't really make sense. And when I had my autism diagnosis, they basically said to me, we don't feel like you have a personality disorder, that you've been misdiagnosed that, and it was actually autism all along.
Wow.
And even if you did have a personality disorder now, that it was as a result of going undiagnosed for so long and basically going through a lot of trauma of thinking that you're neurotypical and trying to move through the world in that way, when actually I was autistic. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about that pivotal moment in your life, because I can't even imagine what that must have done to you as a young person, having that incorrect diagnosis. And that's no small diagnosis either, to be labelled with that personality disorder.
Exactly. I think the hardest thing about receiving a diagnosis like that is knowing there's a lot of stigma that comes with personality disorders. And I know that a lot of the time people associate BPD with being the most kind of stigmatized personality disorder.
Bipolar.
No, borderline personality disorder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which, that's a different diagnosis, but I feel like as soon as you say, oh, I've got a personality disorder and I'm a woman, people assume it's that, because a lot of women are diagnosed with BPD.
Okay.
Again, a lot of the time it can be that they're misdiagnosed with that when actually they have autism, or that they have developed BPD as a result of going undetected for so long.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was putting a lot of trust in the doctor that had diagnosed me. I mean, he was very lovely and, very, very kind to me. But because I, at that point, had no idea about autism or ADHD, I just kind of just took his word for it, because you're going to, aren't you? If a psychiatrist is saying to you, this is what's going on, then you're going to believe them. But yeah, I mean, it was a few years after that when I received my autism diagnosis, and they had kind of said that I'd been misdiagnosed, and that has since been taken off of my health record.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it is difficult because there are people out there that will still maybe think that they have a personality disorder when they're actually autistic, and yeah, it's a big thing. And I think the only kind of thing I can take away from the experience was being told that I had a personality disorder was validating in the same way as an autism diagnosis, in that both of them mean that your brain works just differently to to the standard normal person, whatever normal is.
Yeah.
So it was at least validating in that moment to know that my brain was just a bit different. But it became obviously a lot more validating and a lot more clear when I found out that it was neurodivergency.
Yeah.
And then I was able to really look back through those symptoms of OCPD that didn't align at all, and realise that it just didn't fit at all.
And it sounds like you immediately or quicker could identify more with that autistic diagnosis than the incorrect diagnosis. Like even your own instincts about whether that felt right for you or not was a big difference between the two.
Yeah, for sure. I think, it just made a lot more sense. Like, say if there was, I know we can't be necessarily as binary as this, but say there's a checklist of 10 things for OCPD and for autism, I might have only been checking off 4 for OCPD, but 8 or 9 for autism.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think, when a doctor tells you this is your diagnosis, you're just going to take their word for it because they're a doctor and you're not.
Of course.
So I thought, okay, well, I might not have these things, but...
So day to day for you, obviously we know that with PMDD, the month or the cycle is very much split into two, and it's very much night and day for you in terms of your experience. Alongside autism and ADHD, in terms of your relationships, all different kinds of relationships, how is that for you? Is it difficult to navigate in different circumstances?
Thinking about kind of friendships and dating with PMDD, let alone being neurodivergent, is just such a minefield. It's so difficult. And I know that in the past, PMDD had a massive effect on the relationships that I'd had. Admittedly, they weren't great relationships, so they weren't really helping me in other ways. So I think that it was kind of a bit of a vicious cycle. But I remember before sort of being single. I now have a partner.
Okay.
I have a wonderful boyfriend who is just great about everything and is so understanding and so patient. When you meet someone nice and you're like, I can't believe how much bullshit I put up with for so long. That's actually embarrassing for me that I let people treat me like that.
Yeah, I know that exact feeling. Yeah. Where you think, what the hell was I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Is this what nice looks like? Is this what, respectful?
Yeah.
Not just, I don't know. Yeah, I will say it, not just being a total fuckboy.
Yeah.
The difference is stark.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, but before that, when I was single, it was that scary thing of when do I tell them that I've got this thing? And how do I approach the subject without scaring them off? How do I know when is the right time to say it? And I had also as well just a number of dates where things might have gone well, but then I'd gone into the luteal phase and I just couldn't message them back. And then so you kind of ruin that by just being completely unreachable for 2 weeks. So I do really empathize with any PMDD sufferers that are single, because it is hard. It's so difficult to navigate when you have those conversations. And I think even friendships as well is something that's really tough because you just don't have that consistency. It applies to every kind of relationship in your life. As well as having a lot of guilt that a partner or a friend or a family member has to kind of take care of you. I think there's a lot of guilt and shame there as well, that you need more than the average person. At least that's something that I've really struggled with, is that feeling like sometimes your friend isn't just your friend, they're your carer as well.
Yeah.
And I know that friends love you and they're there to help you, but I think that kind of blurred line can be really difficult to navigate sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you want to, when you have good friendships and good relationships and loving relationships, you want it to be a two-way street, right? You want it to be, I mean, nothing in this world is completely 50-50 because it's there's movement there, it's fluid. But yeah, I can definitely relate to that. You know, the amount that's on Charlie sometimes, if I'm physically debilitated and endo's having a flare or when we've had surgery, yeah, you definitely do think like, God, are they going to get to a point where they've had enough? Or like, are they going to get to a point where they think, you know what, like too much work, it's too hard.
No, exactly. And I have that as well, even now in the relationship that I'm in, of just having moments where I'll be crying and I'll be like, I'm really sorry I'm being such a crap girlfriend. Like, I'm sorry that you have to look after me all the time. And I think there's also that fear of what happens if someone really close to me is in a moment of crisis when I'm in a moment of crisis. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be able to kind of snap out of what I'm going through and be there for that person? There is also that kind of worry of what if I can't give what I need to for that person in that moment. And maybe that's just me worrying about things that might not ever happen.
No, I mean, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. But yeah, and like you said, nothing is ever going to be completely 50-50. You know, there are moments in people's life where they need more support than what they're able to give and things like that. And I don't know if, I feel like maybe this might be my autism, is that I see things in quite a kind of black and white way.
Yes.
That I need something to feel fair, because otherwise I feel just like a really terrible person. And I know that everyone will have that to an extent, but it's something that comes up in my relationships and my friendships a lot. Like, I've had it before where I've had so many conversations with a really good friend of mine where I've said to her, I'm really worried that I can't give to you as much as you give to me, and that feels really unfair. And she's noted that that's a conversation that comes up a lot. So it's definitely something that's always in the back of my mind.
Yeah. And in terms of, that makes complete sense from describing it to someone that obviously doesn't experience that in the same way. Does that for you, that 50-50, the fairness factor, does that, when you think about it, tend to relate to practical kind of physical things in the relationship in terms of being fair, or can it also be emotional?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like, even just yesterday, I was having a really, really bad day in terms of pain and mood yesterday. And my boyfriend said, you know, you're clearly like not feeling great today. I'd had a really bad meltdown and just felt really out of sorts. And I had loads of things to do that was kind of equally split with his to-do list. And he said, you know, I'll clean the flat. I'll do this. I'll do that. Like, you just relax. And I was like, no, that's not fair. Like, I need to do my end of everything. Even with physical things to do, it translates in that way as well. And I think just, you know, for everyone, it's hard to just sit back and let someone else do the work. But I think sometimes when an illness is invisible, you kind of put more pressure on yourself. If you're sat there with 2 broken legs and you can't move and clean the flat and do whatever, you're not maybe going to feel as guilty for someone helping out than if you have an illness that you and other people can't see on the outside.
Absolutely. My mum always used to say that to me when I was going through my diagnosis when I was like 16, with the flooding and horrific periods and all those things. And I used to constantly say, yeah, but if someone looks at me, they're just going to think I'm lazy, or they're just going to think I'm completely normal. And she used to describe it in exactly the same way. She was like, inside you, she was like, you are someone with 2 broken legs and 2 broken arms in a cast that can't move around. But it's just on the inside, not the outside. Yeah,
and I think it's important to remind ourselves of that, because it can be so easy to judge yourself. Like, I mean, it's like, well, I look okay, and other people, you know, think I look okay, so I must be okay.
as we come towards the end of the conversation, I know that you do a huge amount of work on social media for awareness of all three things that we've talked about. How has that, what's your experience of doing that? The response that you get back from people, the conversations that you have, how is that world for you?
Yeah, it's been, honestly, it's been really validating, and it's also been so lovely to know that it helps people in some small way.
Okay.
Obviously, in an ideal world, no one would have PMDD, but people do. And so finding community, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah.
And yeah, being able to kind of speak to people that have had similar life experiences, feeling like people trusting you to speak to you about their own experiences, as well as trying to get some advice. I mean, obviously, I'm not a medical expert, so I can always only ever say, this is what I've gone through, kind of talk to me about what you've tried and where your kind of head's at. But it's been really good to know that it's helping people in some way, and it can be really scary, and you feel very vulnerable speaking on the internet to anyone who wants to watch it about kind of very personal details of your life, or even just showing up on a day where you look and feel like shit.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I really don't want to kind of anyone to see me today because I look an absolute mess, but that's real. And I think it's a really refreshing thing to see when so much of social media is just this kind of fake, perfectly curated life and aesthetic that's not real.
Especially when it's created by people that are in our world that potentially do have conditions.
Yeah.
You know, there's quite a few influencers that I know of the endometriosis world that I just look at their content and think that, like, maybe that is their real life, or moments of it. But maybe that's real life when you're a content creator that has obviously built it up yourself, but earns crazy amounts of money from social media, maybe doesn't have the other responsibilities that the standard person has. So for most of us to look at that and think like, oh, I'm such a lesser person because my life doesn't look like that.
No, exactly. I definitely try and make sure that things feel real.
Yeah.
You know, there's obviously going to be good days where my house is super clean, that I've put myself together, put some makeup on, put on a nice outfit, I've gone out and socialised and done whatever. But then there's definitely always the other side of things when things go downhill and the luteal phase starts and everything just feels like total crap.
Yeah.
So there's that balance there.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that's felt most important to me, is to make sure that I am staying true to myself, that I am being honest. And even just knowing that it helps even just one or two people is so great.
Yeah.
But I think, within the last year, I've grown, I think, about 6,000 followers, which is crazy. So, I mean...
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That takes hard work to be the one doing it day in, day out by yourself without some magic team behind you. It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Okay, so we have a podcast tradition for you.
Okay.
I would like you to imagine that I'm not sat here and a younger version of Lily is sat here.
I feel like I might get emotional.
That's not a problem. If she was sat here, and it can be any age or stage that we've talked about, you can make that decision. And you could say anything to her. What would you like to say to her?
I would probably want to tell the really young version of me that feeling lots of emotions very, very deeply isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it might feel bad, but there's other times where it feels really great. And that's because you've got a slightly different brain, which means that you feel things very deeply. But then that also means that the average person won't feel things as much as you do. So it can actually be a really great gift if you learn how to manage it and how to sit with it. And I think that's probably what I'd say.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. And I hope it's okay to say, but talking to you today, I think she would be incredibly proud.
Thank you. That's very, very kind of you.
Because everything that you've talked about really difficult things that you've had to navigate
Yeah.
in so many different stages of really young childhood all the way up to where you are now. It's really inspiring to hear you talk so candidly.
Thank you.
So openly about it. So.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I was definitely a bit nervous, but you've been great. Thank you so much. And thank you for letting me speak about everything.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I loved our girl chat this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, then don't forget to hit the follow button wherever you're listening. To find out more about us or today's guest, then head to the show notes. Until next time, I'm Alexandra, and remember, it's not just a period.